And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Ryan Stacey, private investigator, citizen journalist, and active Canadian Disclosure Ufologist. He is also a private paranormal psychogenic investigator, creator of the Ultraspectrum Classification System, and founder of the Experiencer Support Association. Ryan, thank you so much for being my guest today, and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's just start from the beginning. How did you get involved with UFOs and bridging the gap between UFOs, the paranormal, and psychogenic communities?
Good question. This is always the question, and it's the longest question, and the one I always worry about, but it's important. So I started, and I've told it so many times, but it essentially I started off as a PI in the paranormal as well. I enjoy paranormal. I've always been a paranormal person. I am still a paranormal person. However, I've been spending a lot of time with UFOs. So I had received a case on a missing persons, and someone had believed that their son was abducted by aliens. And when I was able to locate them, I ended up learning they had just joined Scientology. So in the same spectrum, the same scale, kind of organization or of things, but it wasn't quite alien abduction. So in order to find this person, I had to join these community groups. And within those community groups, I stayed in them because I liked the paranormal stuff, and I started to meet all these other things. Then eventually somebody piped up about a manual that they purchased and they didn't get right away, which happened to be the MUFON manual. And they were complaining because they paid for it and they didn't get it. So I mediated with that. And by mediating with that, I ended up learning that there's a Canadian division, so MUFON Canada. And I spoke to an individual named Stu Bundy, who was the director at the time, and cleared that up. It was just a shipping error because we have to pay the States, and then the States have to ship it to Canada. So there's a little bit of some logistics there. And then we just started talking. So he's like, "You do this for real?" I was like, "Yeah, every day." And he's like, "Are you interested in investigating UFOs?" And I always say, aren't those machines that the government are hiding? And we had a laugh, and then I started, and I still think that today, with all the stuff that I've done. But so then that kind of like skyrocketed into like a series of investigations. So I did one case that opened up. I got promoted throughout the ranks, went through provincial director, and then eventually the director of investigations for Ontario, and then I was the national chief investigator for MUFON Canada. Then I assisted in the MUFON national side, international side, where I was the field director of field investigator training. So I was responsible for teaching all the field investigators how to investigate UFO sightings. So when I was there, I kind of got caught in an ethical issue in terms of people volunteering information to me because they knew I was a private investigator about some bad things that was going on with Jan Harzan. So I had an obligation to make a report. I made a report, which later on led to his arrest. And in something like that, I spent a lot of time being hated and pushed out of the organization for that because it was private. It couldn't be confirmed. I've just recently started telling everybody that I've done that because I feel like it helps for people to understand why MUFON treated me the way that they did because they couldn't really prove it. And then become this ethical thing where, it's one bad person made a really bad mistake. And unfortunately, the entire organization had to suffer for it.
Who were you talking about and what kind of trouble did they get into?
Just look up MUFON and California police, and then you'll have it all figured out. I don't really want to talk about it.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, so I got involved in that because information was volunteered to me, and I had a duty of care, being a licensed private investigator, to make a report to the authorities, and then I ended up getting pushed out of MUFON. So outside of that, what I spent a great deal of time trying to figure out how I could continue helping people. And I created the Experiencer Support Association out of that. Many different things have happened to enlighten that and push that, but there was an opportunity there I end up having, a epiphany or some sort of what we're calling a psychogenic or download experience, where I had a vision of some interesting geometric shape that kind of I've been working on and studying with a few close colleagues there to try to understand what it means. But with that and reflecting on that, it came the idea, or the letters TESA, which eventually became the Experiencer Support Association. And that had basically been built in order to put experiencers first. So it's hard to talk about how I started, because I started in a really good place and then it got really bad, and then I took that bad and turned it into something good. And then in order to explain it, I got to talk about the bad all the time in order to make sense. But like, I essentially took all those problems that existed within the organization and created the positive, created something that everyone wanted, or what everybody at the time thought MUFON could do or was capable of, but didn't know, none the wiser, that they weren't interested in helping or doing anything to that effect. So taking that negative energy and transmuting that into a positive environment, that was the idea of the Experiencer Support Association. So we want the experiencers to feel like they matter. And what's important to say is that, like, I have a lot of I've investigated a lot of cases in my career, and I wouldn't be here to talk about it if it wasn't for them. And MUFON as I try to avoid this subject, but I mean, I'm still grateful for the opportunity, because that's what allowed me to meet these people and do all these other things. And I hope I get to a point where I can explain my backstory without saying all those things. But the point is it's about giving back to the people that give the current people that are in the limelight the opportunity to write these books and go on TV and do these things and talk about them, because there are some experiencers that need that anonymity and have people speak for them, but there are some that would rather speak for themselves, and they need that little bit of protection. And it's challenging, because as a private investigator, like a lot of people I've learned, and I won't expose any of that, but there is a lot of people in this industry that use fake names, and that's so they can't be held accountable and be traced. It can still be found. It's just when you have a fake name and then you have fake experiences and stories, it makes it really hard for me to look at that objectively. And I don't want to say it's all garbage, but to me as an investigator, it's not useful evidence. And I've had a really hard time trying to understand how it all works business wise, because I understand it's a business and an industry and things like that as well, but to understand and separate how much of that is business and how much of that is reality and how much of that is actually, genuine intent. And in the middle of that, the experiencers don't know anything. They've experienced something, and they're looking upon these people, and myself included, for answers. Right. And I never wanted to be an influencer. I only became an influencer because I was trying to survive after MUFON ghosted me for doing the right thing. And so now I've kind of set this example, and I've been making a lot of mistakes recently and things like that, because I really don't know how to be this person that all these people are seeing me as. And it's tough, because they think I know the answers, and I don't know what to tell them. And with all the investigations that I've done and all the people I've looked into to determine whether they're telling the truth or not, or what they know, and all this credentials and things to see if they're qualified, I know absolutely nothing. Well, and that disappoints me.
Let me stop you here.
Yeah.
As a private investigator, can you give us some examples of the most credible evidence you have seen of UFOs? What is the most credible, and what have you seen?
What type of evidence are we looking at?
I mean, we're talking nuts and bolts crafts. We're talking whatever you think in your investigative mind is the most credible.
So, yeah, that's a good question, because I look at it in terms of evidence. So I'm an evidence specialist in terms of that. I've created a classification system that's based on the best evidence. So there's lots of it. I always ask, evidence of what? Because a lot of people say, I have evidence. Well, yes, evidence of what and what kind? So there is a lot of hearsay evidence. there's a lot of circumstantial evidence, whereas like, because this happened, this means this happened, or this happened to this person, it happened to me, therefore. So there's a lot of that. What we have very minimal of, which is better, is analogical evidence, which is drawings or memory, something that's left behind, some residual kind of stuff that can be explained or provided, or some after effect. And then we have very few, some documentative evidence, which is those pictures and those videos. Now, with those would be the best evidence in terms of that, because it can be measured if we're able to get the actual original file. Because what a lot of people like to do is they like to take it and then edit it and then post it and then project and then assume and put all that stuff out there, and then it gets into social media and then it goes all over the place. And then by the time I get tagged into it or I see it, I'm like, hey, do you have the original photo? Oh no, I got rid of it years ago. And I was like, well, I can't. That's been now that's that good piece of evidence is now bad evidence, because it hasn't been handled properly. So there, and you can go one step further and you can get documentation. So like declassified documents. So that would be, for me in this moment, the best evidence, because it's a government source that's talking about the subject. It's whether or not a question of you can trust your government to be telling you the truth about what's being observed. So on that logic, the best evidence that could ever exist right now are those 3 videos that have surfaced and that are still being scrutinized and questioned daily. And since the Pentagon has neither confirmed or denied, it's that has to be the best piece of evidence for the phenomenon. Now, could it be, military? Could it be something like that? Once that becomes a known, then that closes the door. And then if it remains an unknown, there's still people speculating, thinking that unknown means UFOs, means aliens, means extraterrestrial, means all these other things. And so I have a really hard time with it, because it's not really evidence of anything. It's just evidence of an event. It's evidence of a data breach, meaning that the government wasn't able to control this information well enough that it was able to get out to the public. So that's evidence of a bad business model, if you look at it that way. But it's an evidence of an event. It's an authenticated video, according to the Pentagon. I've yet to see the original video, so I can't verify that it's authentic personally. But because it's been, vetted by government sources, there's a little bit of trust that goes in that they've done their due diligence. However, we all, pick your favorite, politician and decide whether, how far you can like them and not like them. It's challenging. Mm-hmm. So this is a great question, because I've never ever went down this rabbit hole. So I appreciate this. So when I get into the declassified documents here in Canada, so I'm Canadian, and we have a totally different view on this as well. But I'm able to see evidence of people looking into it, people investigating it. So the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Air Force, are looking into it. They're not ignoring it. But then what happens is once we get it, all the information, what we have to do is create what's called a service document, communications for vital intelligence or something. I can't remember what the acronym is, but essentially once we get all the information from our people, we have to send that over through that special document to NORAD, which then gets taken over by the United States, and the United States will continue from there. Wow. So our position, that's it in a nutshell. So our position really is we have them too, we're looking into them, and then they get transferred over. So if you guys get disclosure, we get disclosure. But our government has declassified UFO documents in 1994, 1995, like over close to 10,000, that a lot of people have talked about, a lot of people have written books about, a lot of people have showed a document here or two, but no one has actually investigated. And what I mean by that is we have scientists, we have researchers, we have journalists, we have radio people, radio broadcasters, podcasters. We have all these people talking about the idea, and the evidence has already been disclosed. So disclosure has happened. And then, but confirmation is kind of like what we're looking for. in terms of that, which I believed until recently. So confirmation, which is trying to confirm that these documents mean, this or extraterrestrial or UFOs or whatever that case may be. There still is no answer for that, because why? They released the information. So the answers are in there. Mm-hmm. So if you look through them properly, you will find the answers that you're looking for, because it's already there. However, no one's ever done that, because then they write a book and they talk about it and they project their opinions on it. That's still opinionated evidence. You get a journalist who releases a declassified document. I'm scrolling through that, looking to see if that's useful. That's it. I don't care about the story. I care about the document, because that document leads me through other things. When it leads me to people, leads me to locations, gives me associations, and the thing is, with the declassified process, is not every time you do a request, it gets to the same analyst, and not the same, and the same criteria for redacting is never the same, depending on what information is in the document. So if you're tracking them all, there might be something redacted in one, but it was not redacted in the other, and therefore there might be some similarities and patterns where you can assume that what's underneath this one redacted is the same, because the pattern exists when you're measuring patterns. That's an investigation. So confirmation will come through the investigation, but nobody's doing that. But what I think what people are doing right now is there's a lot of belief and a lot of knowing through this experience or testimony that something has happened. They may not understand it. So what they're fighting for is not confirmation. I think they're fighting for a confession. And I think we're at the point now where we know, and we know, is a hashtag I use for my disclosure movement. So we know, and we want, and I think it would be easier if they just confessed and say, yeah, we knew, we kept it from you for this long, or we don't know anything about it, we're trying to protect you. I think that will go a long way, because the evidence shows the government will protect assets. The government will keep secrets, because they need to protect their country. They need to protect our people. There's lots of legitimate reasons for them to be quiet about it, even if it's a human origin, right? If it's the one thing that's going to protect us against the adversaries, and they just happen to be testing it out in the water, and so far away where no one else could see it, and then somebody just happened to get their cell phone out and done something illegal, and then now it became this big thing, then that would make sense why they're addressing it the way they're addressing it, because they have to. What happens moving forward is what we need to see, because they could tell us more, or they could also have the same justification to shut it down, because they just learned where their flaws were, and there's an opportunity for them to budget and to fix. So it's interesting, because to me, when I look at that video on its own, I'm not really seeing any woo. It does appear to be, with the story and the speculation and the eyewitness testimony and all this other stuff from Fravor and Dietrich and stuff, and like I'm understanding and I'm tracking that, but I mean, as an investigator looking into their character too, they're weird people as well. So like, I mean, there's money involved.
Earlier you mentioned about the business of UFOs, and what I want to ask you as an investigator, I'm sure it's impossible, but if you can give me percentages, what percentages do you feel are real UFO accounts? What percentage do you think are just people in the business of UFO making stuff up to make money? And what percentage are people who are doing it just to be famous?
Well, there's lots of categories, because we have people who are messengers. So I would say the radio or podcasts like that share they have an experience and they talk about that too. And then we have researchers, and we have scientists, and we don't have any investigators. So I'm the only one, as far as I know, anyways. It's hard because there's different perspectives. So I would say that everyone that's currently involved is financially benefiting from it. And that's primarily because they started with nothing, and they've been building up, and they've been doing it for a long time, and they've acquired it, and they should be entitled to, because it's not their fault that people are paying for it. If people want to give their money to them, and then they do, and it's up to them to be satisfied with the result when they make that purchase. So there shouldn't be anything wrong with paying for, I guess, infotainment is the term that they're using, but it's not regulated. So and I know I share this. I always worry about telling my background story, even though I don't want to say it again. I do have to be mindful that maybe some people don't know who I am, so I should tell it every time. So I kind of get how there's these circles are small, but sometimes these circles start to get intertwined, and then but somebody listening to one person isn't going to know, because it might be a message that they needed to hear that day. So even if they are using a pseudonym or a pen name and they're hiding behind it, and they are um, trying to relate by saying they're an experiencer, it's helping other experiencers live with it. So I don't have a challenge with that. Excuse me. The because I do it as well, and I'd like to make money for a living. I like to do this full time as well, but it's honest money. It's how it's earned as well. So as far as percentage goes, I would say 100%, myself included, is it can financially can receive financial compensation for the work that they do. Does it equate to the amount of effort that they put up? I don't think so. So like we're never going to make as much money as hours as we put into it. So there's that degree of fair. Now we do, if we look at a tighter category, I don't want to use names, but I mean, those who are on television, those who are on regular contracts that have been doing the same series and the same shows for a long time, those are progressive income. Those are repeated income. So there's dependable income. So they start to do the same patterns, do the same show, the same circle, and they do the same thing every year within that network. That's where we get to symposiums. So that way that lifestyle can continue, because you get used to making a set amount of money. So the problem that we get into right now is that we're at this bracket where these people should be retiring, or like here in Canada, all our ufologists have passed away. So like, I mean, I'm 35. I got many years to go, and I'm scratching the surface, starting a little bit late here, but I got enough, enough to keep me going in this new direction. But I mean, everyone is just trying to keep the money coming in because they're going to retire. So there's opportunity for them to lie. There's opportunity for them to massage it. There's opportunity for them just to take in the cash and then retire off of it. I've been involved recently with a bunch of people in the small circles and social media who actively try to prove some of these people to be not telling the truth anymore, which is difficult, because if you prove that they've done something wrong now, it kind of means or suggests that they've done something wrong this entire time, but that's not always true. And so we're in this generational shift. So for me, knowing that in my research and understanding, I take that so I can project the next 50 years and try to avoid those pitfalls. And that's another reason why I'm putting the experiencer in the limelight here, because they can drive it. We can make sure we do what they need and what they tailor in order to get disclosure. And that's where the research kind of comes into. So as far as me being able to verify, like experiencers don't profit off of this. So I can tell you that in my 2019 to 2020 data set for my Ultraspectrum Paranormal report, which is my second report that I'm working on right now, there's 134 cases that I've closed. Only 30 of them are cases that I can't explain. So, and that's me talking to experts that I know and that I'm aware of. So these experiencers, they will profit from this because I will give them a copy of the book, and they gain something for it, and they get a recreation video. So we recreate the event and show them, like, kind of walk through. So it's kind of, we do this thing called Tessa's Most Wanted, so people can see it and be like, hey, did you see this? So you can report too, so we can get more data. So they do get some value out of it from us. It's not money, but we're still giving them more back. We're giving them a copy of the report. We're adding them to the book. We're giving them recognition. We give them an ID number, so that way they know what their number is. They can remain anonymous, but at least they can feel part of a bigger circle. And then, but then there's individuals like me who would then again receive profit off of that book, because I'm pushing the narrative of the science and the research. So there has to be this understanding with the entire team that everyone is getting what what is fair and what is just all the way along the line, so that way you get that return customer in terms of return experiencers, because once you handle them properly and they feel good, then they're going to report to you again. And the other things that I'm experiencing now in this industry, and a lot of it through my research, is because we have an opportunity on our reporting system for you to tell us how you found us, and if you reported elsewhere, whether you were satisfied or not. So there's kind of a hidden marketing kind of survey in there. And what I'm getting and what I'm hearing is majority of the time is the people that they're using or calling to that are on TV right now are not doing what they want them to do, and they're not helping them at all. So that's a problem on its own. So there's that idea of what it should be on TV. That doesn't mean they're bad. It's just it's been going on the same way for so long. UFOs are now in the in the news. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's doing clickbait on it because it's easy money. And everyone that's in ufology is just writing a book because of the where we are in life right now. And that's it. No one is doing what I'm doing.
Before we started, we were talking a little bit about soft disclosure, and in one venue is through video games. Can you tell a little bit more about video games and other ways that soft disclosure is occurring?
Yeah, so I this started with you noticing my gamer chair here back here. So you asked if I'm a gamer. I do play the occasional video game here and there, but I don't play my games here in this chair. I just spend a lot of time up here, so I just got myself a nice chair. But I've noticed through movies, the Marvel movies and DC movies, pick your favorite, those are kind of conditioning and soft disclosure, as you say, to like some technologies or some religions, some races. So some things that are going on that kind of seem to make sense. Even with the recent Ghostbusters, like that was talking about Sumerians and like there's a lot of history in there that could make sense, but because it's a movie, they get away with it being a movie. And then Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Steven Spielberg, Hynek was in there, helping it with as well. And the story is it's a real story that just changed the location, but it's still Hollywood. So even if that little tidbit could be a lie, but it could also be true. So it's a good platform to do that to that audience. Now with kids these days who are now playing video games, and I think the conditioning can happen there as well. I'm a huge Assassin's Creed fan. I'm currently playing Valhalla for Assassin's Creed, and the amount of detail that they put into accepting all faiths and all religions and all beliefs and all systems, while they there's even Masonic and Templar thrown in there in these battles between religions and things like that as you move through the ages. But you learn about the history and you learn about all these other things, but then there's what they call first world tech first world tech. So which alludes to like the Bible and the Eden and all this other stuff and all this technology that existed in Atlantis and all this other stuff. So it kind of connects it back. It always connects it back to the ancients. So it is conditioning us in a way that's kind of showing. And with Ubisoft right now, like, I mean, with Valhalla, I just started it, but it's focusing on Norse mythology, which is around also with the Aurora Borealis, which is in, and then we're getting into Aboriginal, and then we're getting into really close to, I think they're going to kind of tap into the whole center of the earth or flat earth kind of, it's again part of the religion that they're trying to include everyone, but it's starting to get into this more recent times, which is like Tartarian and mudslides and things like that seem to be really close and recent to what we're experiencing right now. And it just seems too close to home because it feels it's a video game that was created, but yet when you play it, sometimes it feels real. So it's hard because we look at the metaverse, we look at how technology is changing, where we're going into, the direction we're heading, simulations, those idea of us being in the matrix and things like that. Because we have these creative elements, there's opportunity for us to put in these things to see how people react. Because if disclosure is going to happen on a global scale where we all need to come together with unity, Things need to happen in order for us to see how we would respond. If you look at Canada right now, we're in the middle of something, in Ottawa, and good or bad, that's just simply because this thing has happened for a long time, and people have had enough. So whether or not that was intended or a consequence to, it's an experiment, because like everything is unraveling.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that concerns me about things like that is if disclosure of extraterrestrials and aliens is on the table, when we do things like that, it shows on a larger scale that maybe on an even larger scale, we're not ready to understand that. And if we're not ready to understand that as a whole, and this is how we're responding to a command, whether you believe it or not, for the betterment of everybody else, how are we going to collectively on a whole accept the fact that every religion that we thought of doesn't exist anymore?
Who is doing the disclosing? Is it governments or is it the actual aliens themselves?
It could be both. I mean, what is it? So alien, extraterrestrial simply just means something in another, like, extra part of the land. So there's no clarification on whether or not that's in another place on this planet, just outside of what we call the known world, what we know, or in outer space. And the outer space could be simply something outside of what we know of, because we can only travel so many places, so many, one person can only travel. So there's so many humanistic elements that exist that could point the finger to it being the government, i.e. human beings. Maybe there's an extra layer of control with extraterrestrials, but then there would have to be a location for them to manage, and then there would have to be people in on it. I mean, it would have to go deep enough that even our political leaders don't even know about it. So that's where this idea of shadow governments and things like that. So it's possible, but then anything is possible, and that's why I investigate everything within the phenomenon and the people that are affected by it, so I can understand why they are the way that they are, so we can understand how we can get to where we need to be. And I don't know, it's tough because it's tough.
Well, what about this? You're Canadian, and I believe there was a Canadian defense minister or something that came out and gave a bunch of information about UFOs. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, so Paul Hellyer, he was the ex-minister of defense. He was the, I want to say, successor of Wilbert B. Smith. I think that's the one after, if I'm using that word right. And for the Ministry of Transport. And yeah, I actually have declassified documents from him that I got from the Canadian Space Agency, which I haven't gone through yet, but it's of him pushing for the existence of extraterrestrials, and he does believe that. He has seen that according to his testimony. He has passed, unfortunately. I met him a couple times in passing with just at expos and things like that too. And I mean, it's tough because he's a guy who's in government, who had a very high up position, who was the one that took over for the guy who started Project Magnet. So Project Magnet would be the equivalent of Project Blue Book. So essentially the same thing in the Cold War, same time, just different country, different name. So Project Paperclip for you was Project Matchbook for us. Project Second Story, I think, is the equivalent to the Condon Report for you guys in the USA. So like these things were happening simultaneously at the same time here in Canada. And then Paul Hellyer was the guy that took over for him after that. So and then he comes out with all this other stuff. So there's this huge backstory that could support that what he's saying is factual and true. He is an honorable guy. A serviceman, and he volunteered in a lot of service groups in his entire life, which I find it very hard to believe for a person like that with that kind of life to make something like that up. If I look at his character, but it's still possible. When I review the files and things like that too, then I'll be able to associate and figure out what's true and what's not true. And the reason why I haven't done that yet is because I'm building my website. So I'm able to show you my work, because a lot of people, and I don't blame them. I'm a private investigator. I work privately. I don't show my work. And I talk for many, many years about doing stuff and you never see it. So I'm kind of working in a way that I can show you my work so you can actually see what I'm talking about and understand, so you can help. And then part of that website will allow me to share those declassified documents in the way that I want to do it. Grant Cameron has also gifted me some of Stanton Freeman's files when he passed. So I am sitting on some very important, significant documents that could very well help. That came from some very good, credible people. But I'm not looking at the phenomenon the same way. I'm an investigator. I'm always looking for who, I'm looking for what, I'm looking to why, and I need to determine if a crime has been committed. So whenever I get a case for, say, infidelity, a cheating husband or wife, I need to establish first that there's the motive and intent behind the request. I can't just I could take their money and do the job, but it's unethical. And I need to justify if I need to do any searches. So I have a license, so I have to justify my reason for these searches, and I have to provide my license number. So that way, if it ever got messy, then I have to show my work. So getting the information and sharing that information, I have to be considerate of what the client would do with the information when they have it. So I have that duty of care of just establishing at the beginning that there's no harm that's going to come out of it. But then at the end, okay, it determines that your suspicions are true and your wife and or husband has been cheating on you. If I give you this address, what are you going to do with it? Because they paid for it, right? And if I don't give them what they paid for, I don't get paid. I do all this work for nothing. So that's challenging. Because if they say something like, hey, I'm going to beat the living hell out of them. Well, okay, I'm not going to give it to you. Right? I'm going to call the police now, so there's these things that kind of go with it. So investigating, so me sitting on these documents too, some of them have personal information, so they need to be redacted and things like that too. But by putting it out on the internet, people will take it, they'll share it, they'll repackage it, they'll talk about it, they'll misinterpret it. So, and I'm trying to avoid that. So when I put these documents on there, I want to make sure that they're watermarked, so that way we know which ones came from us. So that way we can control the proper narrative in which we put out to make sure it's not speculative on. B, I want to be able to take the data from these reports and split it up into several ways. So I want to isolate the who. I want to we have a visual evidence database. So I want to put where the event happened according to the document and what was described, recreate that, put all this evidence together so it can be measured in proximity. I want to put it in a timeline so we can measure it in time, and then associations, we can measure who was involved. And if I do that with every single document, while that starts circulating, everyone writes their stuff about it, you can come back to the website and you can see everything mapped out and you can see the whole picture. And if you're able to see, if I get a document, because sometimes I get a document from 1952, and then this is something recently I've discovered a couple documents from 1952 from Canada, and I read them, and then at the end it refers to another document. Well, I don't have that document. It's in 1967. I gotta find it, but it doesn't exist. So the next one's in 1980. So I got to timeline it, and I got to figure out, in between, to figure out where I can get that document because it mentions it. So there's more evidence that needs to be found. Mm-hmm. But if I do what everyone else is doing, such as soon as I get it, put it on the internet and have it circulate so I can get likes and followers and clickbait and make some money off of my journalism, that's great for creating awareness, but it's not great for investigating, and it's not helping the cause, and it's not helping the people understand what it is. And then you do get some journalists that take the time to write a story and get some information, and you get some facts from some of the people that are involved, but then they don't want to be named. So then you're using an anonymous source. And the problem with that is that anonymous source could be you. So it's challenging to take that even credible. So there's a lot of work that goes in to get the story out on the journalistic side of things. And that's why money has to be the main reason. So there may still be intent, positive and heroic intent on pushing this movement forward. But money is the reason why they're doing it, because they're going to get compensated for something out of it. So how do I get compensated for out of this? Well, I have a lot of experiencers that are close to me myself being an experiencer of something. I still don't know what it is, and I'm not going to subscribe to one theory. It could be ET, it could be myself, it could be I could have just been smoking too much weed that day. I don't know. Like there's lots of things that could make sense to it, but there's associations of facts that kind of go on later on. And like, and if I do that and I'm able to at least reprogram or regulate the thought process of the stuff that people already know so they can actually look at it objectively, then we're going to remove this fluff, and we're going to stop kind of almost like cognitive behavioral therapy, like in the sense of once your mind goes off, you need to check to see if you have all the information, come back, dial it down, and see what's actually true and possible, and then move from there. So there's a lot of things that need to be done. So I'm not able to help the entire world this way. But if I do it this way, even with a small sample, I always believe that just one person has to find the answer. And if I'm able to find the answer through this method, then that's great, because you guys could benefit from it. And that's why I'm not involved in the American game of UFOs. I'm involved in Canada because it's overlooked. No one's doing anything with it. And it's quite possible, because of a relationship with nations, that we might have the answers that could help you solve your answers to your questions, because ours isn't redacted as tough as yours is, and our information is easy to acquire, not as difficult as yours is, but yet we have to pass information on to you. So, at this preliminary stage, if you look at it this way, it would help. But I don't have time to write a journal. I don't have time to write a book, I guess. So what I'm trying to getting into a point is knowing and predicting the behavior of the people, and knowing that if I put it on the internet, they're going to take it. It's going to go it's going to spread like wildfire, which is why I watermark it, because then my name goes with it. But then at the same time, I'm able to get these documents out quick and fast, but it's in the system. So that way, when you come back to the website, you see how this report matters to, and how it connects to all these other ones. And then you can connect the dots and actually see what's true. And what I've seen so far in my small sample that I've done with Canadian documents, is they put the pin on Germany, it being German craft, and Germany is talking to Canada because they don't want to talk to the United States, because they want, they don't want to, punishment, and, because of the Cold War and all that other stuff, which is why we got some people in what's called Project Matchbook instead. Well, the United States got their scientists through Project Paperclip. So, two different countries, two different things existed at the same war. We all have a different understanding, and even our government will not comment on the UFO declassified documents as well in the United States, because they only comment on credible events. So that's their quote.
Right. I'm going to ask you questions. You can say, is it real, not real, or maybe? Okay.
Probably going to be maybe for all of them.
Maybe for all of them. All right. Crop circles, real, not real, or maybe?
Both.
What about super soldiers?
I believe it's plausible. You can,
All right. What about alien implants?
Possible, but alien would need to be defined.
All right. Extraterrestrial implants in human bodies.
So yeah, biological, something from not this planet.
Yes.
I believe, I suppose it is possible, because we can't confirm or deny that they exist. So it has to exist.
All right. Cattle mutilations. Alien or origin or not?
Both, perhaps. I mean, there are some interesting facts around the incisions and the removal and lack of blood and some of these things. So it does raise some flags, or it could be a really good surgeon who can clean up its mess.
Yeah.
Who knows?
All right. Well, they're all possibles. How do you think ships are traveling here faster than the speed of light? Do you think that they enter another realm like the astral realm and travel at the speed of thought, or are they using wormholes?
I have no idea. So with my work, I'm looking into what's called the ultraspectrum. So that's our word that we're using to describe the ether, and this other place. So it could be an interdimension, it could be this realm, another space and time, however. So we talk a lot about UFOs, but I do investigate paranormal, cryptid, Bigfoot, and ghosts and alien. Like I do everything. I mix it all together. But in consciousness. But what I've been focusing on is the experiencer and trying to understand why this experiencer is able to reach this place. So I have a variance of experiencers that have different ages, different races, different blood types, different hair color, different eye colors, that are able to see very similar things. So we'll use an orb for an example. But then if I look at the methods and the approach and of where they're seeing it, some of them very few of them are able to take pictures of them. And then when I work with them and they do drawings, so then they're pulling it from their mind. And then we have some drawings that we can compare to. But then a lot of the times they're not even sure if they saw it in this realm or another realm. So when we look deeply dive into the experiencer and look at the methods in which what they were doing prior to it, we start to see a variance of what we consider uninvited or invited events. And that could be uninvited, as an example, would be during a sleep or like while you're sleeping. So all of a sudden you have this dream, you see something, you wake up, you think you woke up, you see all these things, and then you draw this orb that you saw. Then invited would be somebody just doing a meditation or a CE5, and then all of a sudden they see something in their mind and then they draw it. So the person who draws, but the two people drew the same thing. And I'm just using an orb as an example, but this can be also used for beings. It can also be used for crafts. It can also be used for a lot of things. So what my study shows is that these two individuals that may share the same blood type, that may share the same eye color, that may share the same hair color, or whatever those characteristics are, blood types that make them common, but they're able to connect to the same place. What's different about them is the method that they use to reach there. So some people can reach their subconscious. It's still the subconscious. That's where consciousness is very important to understand. So the reason why we can't see these things, perhaps it does exist in this other space, this ether, this ultra spectrum. And that is why we're unable to capture it. That's why we're unable to get better data, and we can't measure it, which makes it very difficult to prove. And it makes it very easy for the government to deny. And that's why it has to be possible. It can be possible. And once I'm able to determine a group sample of who is able to get to that place, then I'm going to be starting experiments with them, because that would be, of course, with their consent. We all know about it. But to me, if I'm able to narrow down the criteria for the experiencer that can make contact, in theory, I have a higher chance of making contact or witnessing them making contact when we do an in-field experiment. And what I want to try to avoid is showing up to all these pre-planned events and say, hey, let's try this. It's fun. Let's do a seance. Let's do these things. Well, we'll do all these methods, but I want to do it with a control sample and a hypothesized sample. And then we can look at myself in terms of whether or not I see something in this realm or in the ultra spectrum. So it all has to be possible. There's just not enough data. Like, I don't know how to really say it. I know enough about the subject to know that I'm right, but I do not know enough to confirm if I'm wrong.
Yeah, makes sense. Quite a few of my guests that have had near-death experiences when they're in the other realm have encountered aliens or been to other planets. Mm-hmm. So it makes me think that, maybe they exist in that other realm more than they actually exist in this realm. They just pop in here when they want to check it out.
Then you got to throw in time.
Yep.
So you can confirm that they went somewhere here physically right now, but do we know if they went to this? Are they in the same space and time, or did they go back? Did they go forward? Mm-hmm. There's. It's not like you can see a calendar or anything on the and your watch doesn't change. That's hard. And another thing too with the consciousness, and I'm also looking at the humans being responsible for, because there's more evidence to suggest the possibility because of the variables. I'm also looking at this as a crime element. So if people are being visited or abducted, some people think that's enjoyable. Some people, that's not good for people. And the government can't do anything about it, or they're not willing to do anything about it. I look at that as a crime. So whether you're alone in your room all by yourself, the door is locked, you think you have this sense of security, and then all of a sudden, whether it's in your mind or in your physical room, something is there. That's an intrusion. It's an invasion of privacy. Like there's a lot of criminal activity that goes on. So if it is human beings, then we could link that, and then people could physically be charged and they could go to jail, which could explain why they're being very careful about saying yes to this UFO, because they would have to confess. So you want to look for things where they're starting to pass laws where they could be, free of these charges and things like that before they say yes. So some of those things have happened already. But the point I was trying to get to is we don't know where a mind goes when we're sleeping. We don't know where a mind goes when we remote view. With remote viewing, you can target. So there's a little bit of control there. So maybe I can't use that as an example. But with astral travel, near-death experiences, I just can confirm that they're going to a similar place, if not the same place. And again, methods. So the strategy is we also have a variance of experiencers trying to make contact with ET, and then we have light workers out there that meditate and they spread love and they spread light and they send goodwill and good messages out there for the universe, for the people. So if the light worker is meditating and spreading light out into the ether and sending that positive message at the same time that someone is having a bad day and meditating and asking God or their divine for a message, and all of a sudden, how do we know that these two people aren't just communicating with each other? Does it have to be extraterrestrial? And another example of that, if we look at poltergeist is objects moving in this physical world, and we assume through propaganda and programming that it's ghost and it's apparitions and it's all that stuff in that spectrum. But what if it's us? What if we were having a very bad day and we were emotional and we just lost it, and then all of a sudden those cupboards opened up because we were just really frustrated that day and we did it because of something we thought, and you don't realize it because you instantly go into a panic. And the way we measure that is when we measure the experiencer, they come to us for very different ways at various different times. But what I like to do is I like to encourage them to report every experience that they ever had in their life, including UFO, aliens, Bigfoot, cryptid, whatever they can think of, and then we investigate them separately, remove the fluff, and focus on the cases that are left behind. And what I'm starting to see as a trend is at an early age, there's some sort of contact event that involves a visitation with some extraterrestrial or craft or orb of some sort. Then later on, mid-age, teenagers, early adolescence, whatever you want to get into, there's some paranormal activity or early presence of psychic abilities. And then later on, as they get into an adult, they start to get more spiritual and more connected with Earth and all these other things. So is that generation shifting, or is that human evolution? And did that contact event at the very beginning initiate this, and did we just evolve as humans over time, and is that what we're seeing? And the problem is with like this Tower of Babel kind of philosophy, in sense of even with ufology being siloed in the mainstream, we're forgetting about paranormal, we're forgetting about consciousness. Why aren't we talking about those too? But it's a distraction of its own. But people think they're separate, they think they're different, which is why I investigate everything and I bring them together under the ultraspectrum, because what brings these things together is the people, because the people label these wrong. And an example that I've always used is we look at a paranormal orb and a UFO orb. Not many people know the difference when you look at them, right? So, but they're orbs, they're lights in the sky. So we group that as a sensory display, which allows the option for it to be seen in the mind as well as in the physical world, because we can't confirm or deny where it's going. Just because you can't take a picture doesn't mean it wasn't in your mind. Just because it was in your mind doesn't mean it wasn't factual, if you know how to build a case, which is why investigations is important. And I would be teaching people how to do what I do because I need help.
I'm going to have to switch gears with you, Ryan, because the time flew by.
Time just flew right by.
It flew by. And I want to let people know how to find you. because
Okay, well, to continue that conversation,
before we can always continue it, but and if people want to know more about you, you are a fellow YouTuber, you are a podcaster, you have a Facebook page. Tell us all these places where to find you.
I'm everywhere that I need to be just so people could find me. So the best place is tesacan.org, which is the website, www.tesacan.org. That'll give you access to the YouTube channel. You'll see that. You can hit subscribe. You can see some of the blogs that are there. You can see my bio on one of the pages. The website is being redone, so it's going to look a little bit nicer and easier to navigate. It's hard to navigate right now. But I am on Facebook, so search Ryan Stacey. I don't know, UFO paranormal investigator. I forget what it says. I'm on Twitter as well. So Heed the World _RS is my Twitter handle. Heed the World is on Facebook. I've been told to use TikTok. I'm trying to figure out how I can do that.
Yeah.
I'm not really a one of those, but maybe I'll find a way to get on there as well. So look for that. I do have one, but I mean, I just haven't figured out how to make it work. I have Instagram. I'm all over the place, but I mean, the best way to get everything and the information is go to the website www.tesacan.org, because there is a team. There are other people. We do a thing called Experiencers Anonymous, which is run by Cece, and our assistant with that is Serena Dracis, who is also an author and a blogger and a writer. So I do have other members of the team that do help with the other spectrums, consciousness and paranormal and all that other stuff, and we bring it all together. So the entire Experiencer Support Association is there. And then I have a book. It's best on Amazon. Just go Amazon.com, search Ryan Stacey UFO. It's the best way to find it. But it's called the Canadian Current Event Survey. So the reporting year is 2020. I'm working on 2021 right now, which essentially is a freedom of information request that I required from the government of air traffic events that are strange, that are categorized as UFOs and objects, because I'm trying to determine how many of these drones are actually drones, and how many of these how often this word UFO was used to describe kites and other known things, because even the labels are really silly. So I'm the guy who's trying to regulate and bring it all down to make it simple and easy so I can reprogram the people that are already doing what they're doing. And if they're not willing to do so, I'm also the guy who's creating a training academy so I can teach you how to do it my way, and then we can be the future. Because ufology, as far as I'm concerned, investigative wise, it's dead. And I'm investing in now because I hope for the future. And I can't guarantee without an absolute certainty that the United States government is going to give us the answers that we're looking for. And instead of waiting, I'm building. And I could use, I need a team.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions or chat with you. Are you open to that? And if so, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, so I try my very best to be unreachable, but I'm always needed. So the best way for me that I would like, I do have a new program. It's called Uncharted Case Files, which is at 12 p.m. Eastern time, Mondays and Thursdays. I had a little bit of a hiccup this week, but hopefully I'll get back to normal schedule. I do share these declassified documents. I read them out to you guys, and then I explain, what they mean and how they work in the grand scheme of things as I'm doing my research. So I'm sharing my work with you, but I do a Q&A session at the end of those twice a week. If you're a YouTube member, we do answer questions to you guys first, but we do in this video, I do answer everyone's questions. So I'm there until the questions run out. On our podcast, Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, we do answer questions too for members as well, but I'm a host. So I don't want you guys to be confused that when I'm a host and all of a sudden I'm nice and I'm not drilling and I'm allowing things to pass. It's because I'm giving free and fair speech for our guests, because it's also a safe environment, and not to be confused with this investigator that's also looking for the truth. So.
All right. Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
If you are an experiencer, know this: we believe you. We may not always believe what happened to you is exactly what happened to you, but we are working hard to figure out exactly what is going on to collect the best evidence so we can help you, so you can help others, and so we can understand and help more people. And if more people learn to process this in a healthy manner, in a trusting manner, then this love will spread, this love will grow, and we'll start to receive better information as well. So as an investigator, part of me teaching you guys how to investigate the way that I do that through the experiencer part as well, when you make a report, so tessacan.org/reporting system, I work with you as the experiencer through the case so you can learn how to acquire the things that I need to give you the answer that you might already know. And as an example of that is I use you because you're doing the work and you're there. You're the best witness for that. I don't need to come to your house from that. But then through that experience, if we come to a conclusion of a known event, such as a light refraction, you're going to understand that. You're going to process that better. We're going to have that relationship. And then the next time you see something like that, you won't report it. But then something else will happen and you'll report that. And then we continue to work through it together until we get that one that none of us can explain. And then that'll be a good quality case. And that's what we're looking for, quality over quantity. So we not only do we investigate, but we teach and we heal. So, tessacan.org.
Ryan, thank you for that message. I wish you the best. Have a great evening.
So much.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.